Alright, welcome to second part of part 3 on our Kia fuel line and brake line replacement. We've got our fuel line hooked up to the line. At the end of the first half of part 3, I wasn't getting engagement on my flare down on the bottom where the tank hooks to it, because after doing some examination, my flare was not the right size flare. What that means is that on the inside of that connector, it's got grabbers on it. Those grabbers have to make contact. Let me show you on this piece of dead pipe over here. All right, you see on this pipe here how big that flare is right there. That's for them little teeth to grab a hold of it. Mine wasn't that big. It was off by just like millimeters. So I cut the old one off right behind the one I did, flared it further down because I made extra line for this particular reason right here. Hooked the two together. I heard a positive click and I tried to yank it off and it won't come off. So we're good to go. We got our fuel tank hooked up. We got our fuel pump ready to go. We're going to hook the jump box to it just so that we can engage we're not going to start the car, okay? Just make that clear. We're not going to start the car. We are nowhere near ready for that. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to hook our jump box up so we got power for the fuel pump. We're going to engage the fuel pump and we're going to check for leaks. If we have no leaks in the system, we can move on to putting the evap line in. So, kick on our box. All right, so we now have power to our car. All right, so I'm going to set you down here. You're not going to be able to see anything. Actually, you will, because watch that drain pan. We're going to turn the key on, and we're going to see if we have any leaks in our fuel line. We're going for no leaks for the win. We got power on, and the doors are lights on. Let me find our ignition switch here. Alright, so our key's on. Let's run it a couple times to cycle the top. I think we're charged. Alright, let's check our car. And what do we got? Line is dry. See that? Line is dry. On this side, let's check our engine. Engine side is dry. We're good to go. Fuel line is done. So we're going to go ahead and turn the car off. You can tell we got our car on here. Let's get the mileage on this thing so we can do our paperwork. Okay, 69,734. Okay. Don't mind the gas gauge being down at quarter tank. It's going to do that because the pump sits in the middle of the tank and it's been on ramps for almost 2 weeks. When we sit the car down level with the ground, then the gas gauge will read properly. So we'll go ahead and we'll take off our jump box. This is safer than putting the battery in and taking the battery back out. So that's why I use a jump box for doing electrical diagnostics. Easier that way. All right, moving on. Let's get our evap line installed. It's going to go roughly the same way that we did for the fuel system, with the only difference being we're not going to put the bend in it at the end until we've got the pipe all the way down. This pipe goes down on the outside of the fuel line and deadheads down on the back side of the fuel tank. On the back side of the fuel tank, there is a rubber hose waiting for it that the old one was hooked to. That rubber hose goes to the charcoal tank that sits right near the back wheel on the right side. So let me get my hose out that we're going to use to do this with. or should I say pipe, because it's a pipe. We'll get that thing fed, and then we'll start getting it worked out. So you'll get to see the process I went through to get the fuel line installed with the evap line. So one moment, please. All right, so we got successful on our fuel system. We need to build the evap line, but I can't make the barb end that goes on like the original one has on it, because that was a factory thing. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do one better. Says it's a 45 inverted flare, so let's try that one. We're going to do it in a regular die though, so it may not go 45-degree inverted. It might be just a straight one. I'm not exactly sure, but we're going to try something here. Try it. Get this little stick here and give it a shot. This is what you want to do if you're unsure about what type of flare you want to make, or how to make certain flares. You just take old pieces of scrap you got laying around, and you just make sure that no, we're not going to be able to do it that way. We're just going to have to just push this back. Scoot this forward. Alright, that's level. We're going to see what a 45 inverted flare looks like in a regular flare. We got to make that barb end on both ends of this pipe. So if we can make it successfully on one end, then we can transfer that to the other end. One thing you might want to do though, if this is your first time doing this, is after you get your fuel line made, measure your fuel line and then add about a foot to it. That way you got extra. Because that evap line's got to go all the way to the back, because it connects to a pipe on the back side. Let's see what we got here. Looks like my pipe's moving, so it did move a little bit, but not a whole lot. All right, that came out. Let's see if we have a flare we can use. So like I said, I just need something that holds the pipe on. It doesn't have to be elaborate or anything. I just want to make sure that that evap line doesn't come off. Even though it's not pressurized, I could basically just feed the line on there and put a hose clamp on it and be done with it. Try it again. Tech tip of the day: when you're doing flares and you got pipe that's got covering on it, take some sandpaper or some tack fabric or anything abrasive, like a piece of sandpaper or a sanding block if you do drywall work, and anywhere the die comes in contact, like back in here, clean it up. It'll help your flare come out like it's supposed to. That's how I redid my flare on the fuel line. I took some sanding block that I had and went through that with it. Also, like I said in first half of the video, part 3, take a Sharpie and scribe a line on the back of your die right in there, and you can tell if your pipe moves because that line will pull back. That way you can tell if you gotta tighten your pipe back up. I say do it with a Sharpie because if that way when you're done with it and you don't want to see it anymore, a little bit of fuel washes it right off, or carb cleaner or brake clean, you know, anything like that. So let's go ahead and pull our ram back, see if this is the flare we're looking for. I think we got a winner. All right, let's take a look at what we built. All right. Yep, that'll do it. Yeah, I think that'll hook onto our hose just fine. What we can do is we can test it, because we have a piece of that hose right over here on our car. See that hose sticking up right there, right next to the this is our evap hose. We're going to test our fitting on our evap hose. Look at that. We got us a winner. We have a flare that we can use. You see, you put your clamp right there, tightens it right up. So that makes it hard to get it out, so that means it's going to be a good seal. We're going to have a good positive seal here. So we're going to keep what we got, and we're going to start feeding that down through the car. So let me get that set up and I'll be right back. All right, we're getting ready to feed our evap line down. Now this process is going to be a huge pain because I went through the same problem when I did the fuel line. But I want to show you about exactly how the fuel line went down too. You have no flares on your pipe. You've got to get it down past this steering rack. That's the hard part right there, because this thing wants to travel everywhere. So you're going to have to try different bends and things to get it to go down past the inner tie rod. Once you get it down there and you get it to the undercarriage, then you got that big transmission bracket you got to navigate around. If you can get it around that bracket to the open space down on the outside of the bracket where the lines run, then you can grab it with a pair of vice grips and drag that sucker all the way to the back. So the problem comes getting it down there. I fought this thing for almost 2.5 hours last time trying to get this pipe to go down in there. All right, we got to get our... What I ended up having to do was I ended up rolling the line down and then cutting it. Because then that way I don't have it hanging off the end. That's what I'm saying. If you could measure out your fuel line, and you know about how long the fuel line is, you add a foot to that and you'll have your evap line. So, alright, so first thing we need to do is I need to rotate this. If I got my bend in it, I got to get down into the car, and then I can rotate it back. And then I got to crawl underneath it. Where's my pipe? Oh, it hasn't come down yet. We're not worried about the rubbing right there. There's enough space there that it won't rub. Can't get the pipe down in there. So being that this is a long intrusive process, I'll get the pipe down under the car and then I'll bring you back in and then I'll show you how I pull it through. Okay, I got my line fed. So this is what it'll look like. You get it down in between the firewall and that tie rod end. And then if you got your bends right, it'll come out underneath the car, and I'll show you exactly where it comes out at, because this is where the fuel line came out at. Comes out right there. This is our evap line right here. So now what we need to do is we need to pull this line over like that to where it's in the wide open spaces. We're going to clamp our vice grips onto the end here, and we're going to give it a good old tug. And we're going to pull this line all the way back to the back side of the gas tank, where there's a rubber hose back there that is waiting to go on this car. And then when we get it back there, we're going to leave it be. We might cut the end off where the vice grips crimped it. We're not going to flare it just yet, because then we got to come back up to the front of the car, put that big stupid 90 in it to send it to the other side to hook it over there. And then we'll put our flare on both ends, we'll hook our hoses up to it, then we'll put the retainer back on the firewall, and we'll start working on the brakes. So let me grab my vice grips. We'll clamp on that sucker and we'll drag it across. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set you up outside the car and I'm gonna pull that through, and you can see me pull it through so that you can see exactly how this works. And then I'll kind of set you in a way to where you can see me pulling it, and you can see the line going into the car. That way you can see how this works. So give me just a minute to set up and I'll be right back. All right, we're all set. You can see our vice grips down there on the pipe. I've pulled it a little bit to make sure that we're going to be nice and smooth. There's enough oil underneath that car to add as a lubricant, so I don't think we need to worry about having to spray the line down with like fluid film or anything like that, or WD-40 or whatever you got. But if you find that it's difficult to pull your line through, spray the outside of the line down with some spray, and then as it comes in contact with that bottom, you'll find it'll roll faster. The alternative to doing all of this is, if you have concrete, you can put a jack underneath the oil pan, drop that cross member underneath there that holds transmission in, and then when you get it down under the car where the body is, you can just pull it right straight through by hand. You wouldn't even need vice grips. So unfortunately my ground, as you can see, is still pretty dark, which means it's pretty soaked. So I can't do that with this car, but that's always an option. So let's get some line pulling here. And that's as easy as it gets. You always want to pull a little extra, especially when you're running lines like this where there's no going back. I think we're good right there. Clamp our vice grips. See, the good part about this is if I don't pull enough line, I've got plenty of rubber hose. So I can always extend my rubber hose to take up the difference. Now we got to get under here and we got to make that big stupid bend so we can hook our lines up here. So to make that big stupid bend, we're going to cut our line. We're going to cut our line a little long, because then that way when we make our big stupid bend, we can get it. If it happens to hang over the fender, for example, we can always cut it off. So again, if we end up cutting it too short, we can always extend the rubber hose. That's the good part about this line. This line's not vacuum, okay? And if there is a vacuum, it's minute. This is an evap line, so this takes the fumes off the fuel tank, and it stores it in the charcoal canister until it's ready to be used. And then what it does is the engine will pull it through, and it gets burned in the engine in the combustion chamber. So that's what evaporative emissions is. So we got our line cut, we got it run through the back. Now we got to get our stupid bend built, which is not that hard to do on this car. We got to pull our front brake line back. We got to rebuild that brake line today too, so we're going to get that done. So we need to move this to the other side of our hood pole, because our pipe's going the other way. Alright, and then we can make our bend. It's not going to be the greatest looking bend. Then again, I don't care. I mean, I love what I do, but when it's on stuff like this, you know, if this is a customer's car, even though it's the wife's car, it is still a customer's car. So I give this the same amount of respect that I would give any other customer's car. So I gotta get a socket out so we can make that 90 right there. Actually, what we'll do is we'll take one of our flare fittings right here, and we'll take one of our flare fittings, we'll put it between these two fingers, and we'll guesstimate right about there. And then we'll make our custom bend here. You want to use a socket, and you want to kind of go gentle with this, because if you kink this line, you're screwed, because you're going to have to go back and redo the whole thing. Alright, so we got our bend. It's not kinked too terribly bad. We got to feed it under the wiper motor. Here we go. And we got to straighten it out. See, as long as it gets across in here where we can put our hold downs on, that's all I care about. Alright, so like I said, it's going to hang over our fender. We're good. We're good. Because now we're going to cut and flare our end. And then we're going to go to the back of the car and do the same thing. And then the evap line is done. So our hose is right here. So I think on the original line it was right about in here. So we'll cut it right about here. And if it requires a short twist on it, we can always put a short twist on it. Don't worry about it rubbing underneath the car. That's why we made sure there was extra. If you're able to reuse your connector, your clips on your car, go for it. We are unable to on this car because they're rusted out and most of them are broken. So what I'm probably going to do later on is come across with some strap, like some strap. We're going to use some self-tappers, or we're going to build some straps underneath the car on the body to hold this line in place. So, alright. Go ahead and put our customary flare on the end of this pipe. There's our flare. You got to go and do that on the back side too. Alright, so now we got our line run. Let's see if we can get it attached to the back of the car here. We should be able to kind of put a flat in here somewhere where we can attach it to the back of the car. Well, that one wants to fit in there now, so so this is where the zip ties are going to come into good use, because we're going to zip tie our lines together. Make sure if you have any cables like your master cylinder wire that you pull it away. So we're going to run a tie. Let's see, actually we can pull that back the other way because we're going to push this in like that. We're going to run a tie down between these two. So the tie is going to hold the two lines together. So I'm going to go get a big fat zip tie and we're going to hook that up. Alright, so let me get you in here so you can see where we're at, what we're doing here. Alright, you see that corner right here? I'm going to zoom in on it for you. That corner over there, there's a connector, okay? So we're going to take some zip ties. We're going to tighten the one up that we started on here. If we don't just cut it. No, we're going to tighten it up. We're going to tighten it up. We're going to tighten it up. Alright, and then we're going to cut that off on the end. Down here, where the two lines come together, we're going to tie those together down here. Okay? So that's where the first one's going to go. We're going to get it started right in here. And we're going to pull that through. And then we're going to go ahead and tie that together. And then of course we're going to have to tie it together under the car somewhere, I think. I won't know until I get under there. Alright, so those two are tied together right there. That'll work fine for what we're doing. We're not putting that piece back in down there. And we got enough fabric on the firewall here. I don't think we're going to have any problems with rubbing. Not to mention the fact that there's a nice gap down there so that we can not worry about that. And we'll come up here and we'll cut our tail off on that one because I don't like tails on my things here. That'll work for right now. Let me get my socket in there. Yeah, always leave a point on it. That way you rip somebody's fingers open when they have to get back here. Kind of a revenge thing for having to screw with this car. Alright, so let's get our retainers out and get our lines put in our retainer. And then after we get that done, we can hook our hose up. Then we'll go to the back of the car and we'll get the back of the car finished up. And then we'll start on our brake lines. Alright, so here's your retainers. You might remember these from part 1. This part goes on first, and then this little piece here locks down like that, and then your nut tightens it up, and your lines go in here. I don't know why they're two different sizes, because we're using the same size line, but whatever. So what we'll do first is we will install these, just like this. Open up our clamp here so we can get our fuel line in. Let's see, fuel line wants to run on the top, so we got to put the evap line in first. So it goes like this. Evap line, then the fuel line. So it'll look something like this. There we go, like that. And we'll slide this one to the back, and we'll clamp it to that right there. Don't worry about them being all, oh, let's see, they did cross over, didn't they? Alright, well, let's change the setting then. Let's go ahead and rotate them. They want to go opposite the way they were on the car. That's fine, we can do that. They're just metal lines, we can move them around when we need to. They want to go that way, so we'll make them go that way. Alright, whichever way works for me, I don't really care. Alright, and then we'll put our nut on here, and then we'll come back later on and tighten these up with the socket. This is just to hold it in place so that we can continue on. Alright, so we got that on. And we'll grab the second one, which is right here. We'll do the same thing on that. Get our retainers reinstalled. Just line them up in the hole and then slide this down. These kind of like on the Buick. If you've seen the Buick LeSabre video where I did the fuel lines on the Buick, it's kind of like that. Except the Buick uses rubbers to keep the static electricity down. So that's the only difference. I'll go get a socket and we'll tighten that up, and then we'll be good to go. That's what it looks like when we're done. Alright, so we got our socket here. We're going to tighten this up real quick, and then we're going to hook our rubber hoses up. Make sure these are lined up on the grommet. Make sure that rubber is nice and seated inside there. That way you don't have a torn rubber. Alright, and we'll go ahead and we'll straighten that out. That makes sure that's perfectly straight when you do this. That one's in. We gotta turn our tool this way so we can get this one in. Alright, that one's down. Oh, that rubber shifted. It's alright. Can't get them all. Now, see this here, we got an issue because it's kind of like off on the side like that. So on the original line, there was a bend in it. So we're going to put a slight bend in it, like this. We're going to put a slight bend in it. That way. See, we got a slight bend. Our fuel line's intact. It's not going anywhere. our rubbers are making sure that happens. Now, if you need to, you can always push that down, but my main concern is whether that crimp's going to cause a problem. If that crimp causes an issue, we're going to have to cut that fitting off, cut it short, and then we're going to have to readjust our line, but we won't know until we get ready to start the car. So let's get our evap hose hooked up. So, vice grips for the win. Now they make a tool for this. Comes with a great big long cable attached to it. Not necessary. If you got your nice pair of wide-angled vice grips like this, you can just do this with it. Run it till it stops and then run your clamp up. Oh, your clamp don't want to go on. Okay, well, we got a fix for that. Pull the hose back off. We'll take the clamp off and put a hose clamp on it that's very respectable. I hate these damn things anyway because they snap and they break your finger. Let me go grab a hose clamp. I'll be right back. All right, let's zoom in so you can see what we're doing here. All right, we're going to put this hose together. Now, there's another way you can do that if you don't have any hose clamps. Take the hose clamp that you had on here, put it on the metal line, feed this on top of it, like that, and then move your clamp back over and put it back on the hose. That's an alternative if you don't have a hose clamp. But I don't like those spring style clamps anyway, because after time they lose their spring and then the hose is kind of freewheeling there. They use those on the radiator hoses on this car, and when we got the car here they had rusted out completely, so I had to change the lower radiator hose clamps on this car. Alright, so we're nice and tight there. Our evap tank's hooked up. Let's move to the back. Back's going to get interesting because we got some stuff to do back there. So let me get you set up and we'll get started. Alright, we are at the back of the car. Our evap line's way up there next to that spring. So before we can navigate that pipe down underneath the car where it needs to be, we got to clear the line out. And the line's that piece of rubber hanging off that torsion bar right there. So what I need to do is we need to get some vice grips. I'm going to show you how you clear a line out. Alright, I'm going to set my carpet up over here so that I can get in here and not obstruct your view while we do this. Okay, so we have the old line still in the pipe right here. And it looks like my clamp fell off, so I'm going to have to go get another clamp for it. That's totally fine. As you can see, I put extra hose on here in the event that we had to move it down. So we got to clear this pipe out. So to do that, we're going to grab this with our pliers. And we're going to just kind of twist on it. If we can't get it out that way, since we have extra hose, we're going to cut it on the back side. And then we'll get it out that way. So let me grab this real quick with the vice grips. There we go. And see on this end, it's got that special fitting on the end that we kind of made with our flaring tool. So all it does is just hold the hose on. That's all it does. In the event that your hose clamp fails, you have something holding it together. So now that we got our hose cleared, we can grab our line. We got to feed it up over the axle, and it comes out somewhere in this area right here. So let me go get the line and we'll feed it through, and then we'll figure out where we need to cut it at, and then I'll get the flaring tool out and we'll flare it real quick. Meanwhile, I need to locate, there's our clamp. I found our clamp. So we'll set that over here on the carpet so I'll forget where it is. So I'm gonna go grab our line, and you're gonna see how this works too. We're gonna keep rolling. This is not as easy as it looks. It is quite difficult. In case you're looking at it going, that looks really easy, try it. Trust me, you ain't gonna do this again. All right, so we gotta run our line. We gotta pull our line back so we can get it up into the car. And that line, you gotta pull it, put a bend in it, so get it up over the axle. Get it up over the axle. And then we can pull it over. See that? And this is supposed to ride on top of the fuel tank. So this scene might look familiar, and you might see this a few more times in this video. Here's our evap line. I unraveled it and brought it to the front, ran it up above the tank. Here's our evap metal line. Those two are going to tie in somewhere in there, and we're going to clamp it down and call it done, if I don't beat my camera to death. So let me get you set up in a spot where you can see what we're going to do here. We'll get this part done, and then we'll start building brake lines. I figured it's easier to do it this way than to try to run it the way that Kia had it, being that this car realistically has not much time left in it. And if we wanted to, we could wrap it up above the pressure line, but we're not doing that because I don't want to put any strain on that line. This is just a rubber hose. It's got no real issues or value to it, so we're just gonna tie it on like this. See that? Get our hose hooked up. That's it. Get our hose on here. Get it down far enough where we can put our clamp on it. This hose does not go as easily as the one on the engine because this one here is a size smaller to fit over the charcoal canister. But as you can see, there's our flare, and there's our hose clamp right there. So we just got to get our hose clamp tightening tool, which is somewhere around here. There it is. Sorry about that, guys. Get our hose clamp tightening up tool here. We'll set this up like that. Now this line's not going to hang down any more than what it is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a zip tie, because you know we're all about the zip ties here in this industry. I'm going to tie it. Probably going to tie it to the fuel line, but not right now. There's our VVAP line. You just kind of tuck it up like that for right now. We're good to go here. Like I said, I'm going to come back through and get some metal strap, and I'm going to tie these up to the body of the car. So, because we got this rail right here, and we're going to get some strap and strap it across there. I'm not going to do that for you guys, but I'm just telling you how I'm going to secure this thing. So, evap line's done, fuel line's done. There's our union for the back wheel. So I'm going to grab some brake line. We're going to get some routing done, some flaring done, and start getting some lines run. Now the only issue we're going to have is connecting to the right rear wheel. So what I'll do on that side is we're going to run the line up above the back here where the parking brake cables come through the body, and I'm going to have it sticking out over there on the other side. And then I'll put the car on the ground, I'll jack that tire up, take tire off, then I'll route the line over and hook it into the back of the drum. We'll be good to go. So this line here that's under here, this is coming out, but I got to get it off the body. I got to get it off the drum first. So all right, so the next spot we're going to hit is the left rear wheel. So let me grab some brake line and let's get some plumbing going. All right, here's the part number for your brake line, 325 3/16. All right, and then we're using metric flares. There's your metric flare part number, and that's what it looks like on the back side there. That's the closest I'm going to find to what Kia used, which is just your standard industry flare. So we're going to move our tools out of the way so we can do some work here. All right, so we're going to put our end on first, and then we'll feed it through the car. So take one of our fittings. One thing you want to do before you do this is take this down on that union and make sure that it's going to fit, because if it's not going to fit the union, it's going to leak. Last thing you want is it to leak. So let me run down there real quick and check this out, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I went ahead and routed the brake line. If you remember part one, it had a union in it. Okay, well, I don't have a fitting for the union. Had to order it, so it'll be here tomorrow. So what we can do though is we can hook our line up to the proportioning valve and get that ready to go. So all I got to do tomorrow is flare the bottom of it and tie it onto the rest of the side here. And then this is done, we can drop the car down off the ramps. I do still need to run the right rear wheel, and I'll probably do that before I pull the ramps. But let's get this part done since that's where we're at. So I got my fitting here. That's your part number for your fitting. Okay. So we got our line. We're doing a 4.75 millimeter bubble flare. Okay. So to do bubble flares, it's kind of like doing everything else. We set your fitting down on top of your line right there, and then you go ahead and you put your tool on. I double checked everything with the brake hose I bought for the left front wheel, because I'm changing the brake hose on the left front wheel. So as long as we don't, well, I'm gonna put a pair of pliers down here, and we're going to lock them on so that that nut doesn't slide down into nowhere land. Last thing you want, your nut disappearing into nowhere land. Do it gently and you don't crush your line, and you can do this. Because all you want is just enough grab for it to hold the vice grips. You don't want to crimp your line. So let's go ahead and get our die engaged on our line. Alright, then we'll put our keeper down till we get our end of our line where we want it. Yep. You pull your stopper back. And that stopper puts it right flush with the top of your die, so you don't have to worry about being off. Alright, then we're gonna do a bubble flare, which is what this car requires. Now, we're gonna do what's known as an inverted flare for the union down on the bottom, because whoever set this car up last time, I guess, didn't really care about somebody else later on fixing it, because they figured this car wouldn't last as long. So we'll work with it until the line breaks, and then when the line breaks and we got to hook it to the hose, then we'll fix it up right. So alright. Looks like we have us, yep, we have us a working flare for our proportioning valve. You get to see it here in just a second. I gotta pull this line off. Look at that, we have us a double flare. That is a bubble flare, everybody. That is what we need to have to hook this line to our proportioning valve, which we're gonna do now. So, because we have to hook it to that innermost connection, so let me point it out to you the way this is understood to me based on the diagram at the beginning of part 3. This one here is left rear. That's the one we got to go to. This one here is right rear. Now, before we go bending this line into position, I'm going to go grab the chart and verify that that is correct. Because if you don't hook this up right, car, when you go to hit the brake, is going to go sideways on you. So let me go double check this information. I'll be right back. Okay, I went to the office and got the... Okay, so we're going to the inside one. That's that one right there. Okay? So, we're not going to do all the fancy bends that was in the line originally because, you know, like I said, we're just trying to make the car run. We're not trying to win any awards with it. So, first thing we're going to do though is we're going to get our brake line to where it's inside one of these connectors here. So we gotta, I guess we need to, you know, it would be easier if we could route it around the transmission lines, but, or the fuel lines, but I think we can get to it back here. Yeah, that'll work fine. So we need to make sure we got a bend for that. Then we need to make another bend. Okay. And then we need to bend it some more. We got to get it underneath these cables right here. Okay. And we got to get it underneath these. Got to bend it underneath the accelerator cable. So we'll have a bend for that. And then we got to kick it back a little bit. I think we may have too much cable. Yeah, we might have too much cable. Let me see. Because Kia, when they put this together, they make this thing extremely long. So let's see, can we get a 90 on that to where it can go straight up into that? Okay. So I think we're going to have to, well, let's hook it to this. We'll hook it here first. And then any slack we got to take out of it, we'll take out of it down the line, because we can always pull the line through. See, I can grab the line on the back and pull it through. I'll show you. So I can pull it through to where I can shorten my line up, see? And then I can make my bends where I need them, and then we'll be okay. So we need to, because we got to keep in mind, we got a master cylinder right here we got to deal with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, see, like that. Then we can wrap it around. We got to get our 90 in here, so we got to pull our 90 up. There's our 90. Probably best you do this when you get your nut up to the top. Then we can put your 90 in. Alright, and then take your thumb and just kind of push it around there. And then we'll pull it up, bring it over, put another 90 in it, just a little bit further up. And then we can almost, we gotta tighten this up just a little bit more. Alright, so what do we gotta do here? We gotta go on the other side of this evap line, so I'm gonna have to cut that and go around the back side from the looks of it. Yeah, maybe we can make it work. Let's try to make it work first before we go getting all crazy with it. Because I can always take that zip tie out to where this will slide. Matter of fact, let's do that real quick. One that we put on our our fuel lines. There we go. Now we can run our brake line over and move this other line out of the way. That has to be sitting straight up and down or it will not attach. That's about the way it goes on any of these types of fittings. Alright, let me get in there. Let me go get my wrench. Alright, it's been a few days since I worked on the car, so I'm not sure where we left off, but I can tell you what I've done off camera. I had to pull the throttle body off, so we're going to have a part 4, And on part 4, we're going to button the car up. So this is what you see here is going to be coming to the end of part 3. So let's recap real quick. We got the fuel lines hooked up. We got the evap line hooked up. We got the line ran to the driver's side back wheel. It is attached on our proportioning valve right here. I had to take the proportioning valve off to get that to go in there because it wouldn't fit any other way. That's why I took the throttle body off. This pipe right here runs on the back, as you've seen in the earlier video. Makes it very hard to get these 2 lines on down here. So what we're going to do is I'm about ready to go underneath the car and connect that line to the back wheel using that union. Okay, I had to go get a flare nut for it so that it would work. All right, once we get that line hooked up, then we're going to run the line for the right rear wheel, get it wrapped around the back of the car, and get it up here. Then, once that's done, we're going to take that tie piece that I said we weren't going to use, we're going to reuse it so we can get all of our lines organized, because I found out that our lines are going to rub against that boot down there for the steering, and we don't want any rubbing of the boot because that will translate through the steering into the wheel, and I'm going to get a complaint of my wheel vibrates when I turn. We don't want that. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to tie all that up, which means I might have to go get a nut for it, but that's my problem. And then we're going to get it off the ramps. Then after we get it off the ramps, we're going to go over to the right rear wheel and get that hooked to the drum. When we get that done, then we're going to come up front to the left front wheel. We're going to pull the tire off. We're going to get that. We're going to see if we can get this line right here off of that. And if we can, then we're going to build us a new pipe, because I was going to use this one. Then I saw the rust down here on the firewall, right there in the shock tower. And I'm like, well, that's another leak that's going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and just replace that line altogether. And then, let's see. This is our right front wheel. So I just got to tighten that back up. We're going to use this to verify our flares are good. I believe that's a bubble flare. I've already verified that our fittings work, so that'll speed things along. So that's where we're at. So I'm going to go and I've shown you how to do flares. It's the same process the rest of the way through. So I think I'm going to go ahead and end part 3 here. We're going to pick up part 4, and I'm going to show you how I routed the lines and everything, because I really need to get this car done. It's been in my shop going on 3 weeks now. It needs to be out of here. I've got other vehicles coming in that we need to do work on. So I'm just going to turn the camera off and just bust it out. And unless there's something that I want to show you guys that can't wait till part 4, I will see you on the next one. All right. Just want to bring you in real quick. We're getting ready to put the car down. Show you what we got done in here. Got our lines ran over to our proportioning valves. So there's our lines going into that. We got our brake line hooked up there. We got our bolts in. So we're done under here. You want to try to get if you have this little plastic still in your car, try to get your lines in there. Also, very important, there is an order of operation when you do these lines. You do the brake lines first, which are the small lines, then you do the big lines second. Because if you don't, the way that they got the clip set up, I'll show you on this one here. I got a broken one down here, but it's together enough I can show you. All right, this sits like that. So you're looking at the back of the car, okay? Your left front goes here, or your left rear goes here, right rear goes here. Then you got your evap line, and then your gas line goes on the far end. If you don't do it that way and you try to do it the way I did it, you're going to be shuffling lines underneath this car, and it's just not going to go well for you. So reason you're here is because we're getting ready to get the car off the ramps. So we're all done on this side of the car. We got to jack up the right rear wheel and pull it off. We got a line waiting for it. I'll show you the line while we're getting our pod set up. Right there. I don't know if you can see it too well. Right there's our line right here. It's ready to go to this back tire right here. So that's where we're at in the stage of things, but I wanted to show you some things and tell you some things. Okay, so when you got a car on ramps, when you get ready to pull the car off the ramps, you want to drop your hood. And the reason you want to drop your hood is because you don't want that hood to come down and then when it hits the ground, it shatters your windshield. I've seen it happen far too many times. So we're going to let our hood down, protecting our windshield. And then when you get your jack, you're going to put it underneath the rear axle. Okay, it's kind of an axle, but not really. It's more or less a torsion bar. And you're going to jack it up just enough to get the tire off the ramp. Grab the ramp and pull it out. I'll show you. And let's come back over here so you can see everything that I'm doing. That way it makes sense to you as to what we're doing here. So, and you want to do the back first because the front's got a coil spring, so it'll articulate. Whereas the back, this one has a coil spring on it too, but that bar only moves so far, so you don't want to break that bar. You put your jack underneath it, like this. Got a strut tower you can go across. So we're going to come up front. Same operation on the front. This car is a little strange trying to find a spot to put the jack, so we're going to get the jack under here, and then we're going to move to the back. Okay, I found a 2x4. Kind of an odd shaped one. This was in the battery tray on the John Deere because they had an undersized battery in it, but that's a whole other video. So we're going to put this on top of our jack to give us that much more room. We're going to jack this up, pull this ramp out of here. I got the physical parking brake set and I have it bricked so it's not going anywhere. So let's see how this works. Right where I want it. Well, that's something I wasn't planning on. Yeah, okay, we'll take it. Oh, Jesus. We got a problem here. See if I can jack this car real quick. And we're going to have to take our, we're going to have to pull our ramp out of the dirt because apparently it's dug deep. Okay, when you're faced with this problem, I'll show you how you fix it. I'll be right back. When you're faced with this issue, take tire off. Works every time. And we'll put the tire back on when we get the ramp out. Do that, pull the tire out, pull your ramp out, put your tire back on. Since we got to come back up here later, I'm not going to be too concerned with tightening the bolts up too tight because we're going to have to get back in here and address that brake line up there. So, tire back on, let your jack down, and then your car is back on the ground again. Does it on your jack because you're on your transmission cross member. You want to go nice and slow, just like that. And there you go. Car's back on the ground for the first time in 3 weeks. What do you think? There you go. So in case you're wondering about these Kias, I don't understand why they do this. This is the right rear wheel. And I got my line loop-de-doodled up to the brake hose. And then this brake hose comes around into another connector. It goes up to a little zigzag line that goes to the wheel. Why couldn't they just run the line straight to the wheel like they do on an American car? This hose is not necessary. So if you own a Kia, and I know one day this hose is going to become obsolete, you're not going to get it, and you're doing these brake lines, you want to bypass this hose, be my guest. Just cut you a little extra line, run it straight, kind of like loop-de-doo over here, and then over here, because you don't want to get it caught in the coil spring. But I just thought I'd show you this because the other side's the same way. Now, the front brake hoses, I can understand that part, because disc brakes require some sort of rubber hose for some reason, but these are drums. And this is a non-ABS car, so there's no reason for this hose right here. But I'm not about to take it out, so just thought I'd show you this. We got our back brake line hooked up to the back here, so I'm on my way to the left front wheel to finish that up. And then we'll see what happens next.